Okay, peace, everybody. The San Francisco Department of Public Health acknowledges that we are on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of this land, and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. As guests, we recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. We wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush Ohlone community and by affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples.
Okay, let's roll into the welcome. Remember, roll call introductions. Again, feel free to introduce yourself if you're not a Food Security Task Force member in the chat. Moving any public comment on the welcome and roll call. Fantastic. Okay, we are moving into item number 4, which is the approval of minutes from April 1st. Fantastic. Thank you for taking those minutes. Any corrections, changes, edits?
I will note that Reagan had a couple of grammatical corrections, but she does have to abstain from today's vote.
Great. Thank you, Reagan. Appreciate it always. Okay, do I have someone who's willing to move to pass these minutes with those minor corrections?
Hey, Sissy, I make a motion to approve last month's meeting minutes with Reagan's excellent grammar edits.
Fantastic.
I can second, Sydney.
Great. That was seconded. All in favor, and these are Food Security Task Force members, please raise your hand.
I'm in trouble raising my hand, but this is Mei Ling saying yes.
Great. Did you get all those, Eric?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Can lower your hands. Any abstentions?
This is Tiffany Kearney with DOS. I'm abstaining. I wasn't there.
Great, thank you.
I couldn't find my hand.
Okay, does that make two?
Four abstention or 3 abstentions.
3 abstentions. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, pass. Good. Any nays? Great, I'm not seeing any nays. Okay, great. Eric, was that enough? Did we pass?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Okay. Any public comment on the approval of minutes? Okay, great. Thank you. We are moving on to item number 5. We always leave some time at the beginning of the meeting for general public comment that is not related to a topic that we will be talking about in the agenda. So opening it up for general public comment, item number 5. Okay, I am not seeing any hands up or notes in the chat. Okay, great. Moving on then to item number 6, which is the 2026 Food Security Task Force recommendations and the status of those. So we'll go ahead and move into this. So thank you all for those that helped put this together, review, give comments, and particularly to P and Eric who put this together. Looks really good. P is going to share a quick the current status is the PDF of the recommendations is in its getting finalized by the graphic designer, and it will be ready to go by Friday, I believe. P, is that what we're thinking? So we'll be able to get that out. And then we will be able to start to set up meetings with the Board of Supervisors and other key stakeholders to review the recommendations. So P, if you want to share the screen. You can see this is just a brief of what it looks like, and then it will be posted on the Food Security Task Force. We will disseminate these recommendations. Will be posted on the Task Force website, and again, we'll set up meetings with Board of Supervisors and other key stakeholders, including the Mayor's Budget Office. Yeah, can you roll down a little on this?
Mm-hmm. So I'll go page by page. I don't know if you want to talk through this, Sissy, or if you just want me to go through each page and then pull back to the front.
Yeah, you can just kind of go through it. These will follow go ahead and go through it. This is what we had discussed in our meetings and we've gone over a number of times. This is the final. Notice some of the key issues coming up, HR 1.
So we are at 10 pages with task force members, references, and cover page.
Great. So I think the key thing here again, we have also a PowerPoint that goes along with this. Did we go too fast for everyone? Or does everyone feel comfortable? We've gone over this a number of times in the meeting, so in our task force. So the recommendations at the end are consolidated recommendations based on the top 3. Maybe we can just go over that one more time. Just the last page. Yeah, the food coordination structure with the Office of Food and Community Advisory Board, the mitigating this impacts of federal and state cuts, including HR 1, and ensuring adequate funding for food security. And then continuing to address food security through a health equity approach in a number of ways of prioritizing, looking at neighborhoods that have highest impact of nutrition or diet sensitive medical needs. Work around the food as medicine, and really looking at the constriction of food resources, particularly with the large grocery stores. And there's more detail, of course, in the mitigate of the impacts of the federal and state cuts. Okay. And then there's a lot more detail that we talked about with these successes and opportunities that were included in here. And then again, we've shared these over time, but these are just packaged together. Questions? Oh, so next steps. Any questions or comments from the Food Security Task Force? Yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
Hey, Sissy, thank you so much for presenting this. Sorry, I hear someone's. Oh, never mind. I have some background noise. I'm having a hard time explaining what my question.
Thank you. Okay, great.
But anyway, my question was, I briefly saw on page 7 to page 8, there's like one sentence that just says justice incurs. If there's a way for us to like keep it on one page, so there's not like a 2-worded sentence. But I know that's a formatting thing, I'm sure. But I just saw that briefly. I'm like, oh, if we could change that. But otherwise, I think the graphics are kind of new based on last time I saw it. So I appreciate all the colors and things like that. So thank you.
Great. The next steps are, like, again, disseminating and getting those meetings going. We really want to have members of the Food Security Task Force attend the meetings with the Board of Supervisors and other stakeholders. So really encourage folks to attend those. Once P will be getting out some dates that what we did last year is we sent out some dates for the supervisors and their aides to attend in more of a group. And we will continue to do that. And then we can also set up separate meetings with individuals, supervisors. So that's the plan. But there's a more, there'll be basically a number of sessions for folks to be able to attend. Anything else P on that I need to P or E that Eric, that I've forgotten? Again, thank you guys for a tremendous amount of work on that. They look good. Okay, questions, comments from Food Security Task Force before I open it up to public? Thank you, Reagan. Okay, let's open it up for public comment. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up. I'm not hearing any no notes in the chat. So great. All right, thank you so much for that. We're going to be moving on then to the status of the Food Security Task Force and next steps. And so this is in relation to the next item, which is an update on the new food structure for San Francisco that will be presented by Peggy Moriarty of the San Francisco mayor's office. And I think, is Susie Smith, is someone else from HSA also presenting? Possibly. So as we know, the San Francisco Food Security Task Force is slated to sunset on July 1st of 2026. We have had, oh, Cindy, thanks. It sounds like it's just Peggy. Sounds like we have talked to a number of supervisors who were interested of the Board of Supervisors that were interested in sponsoring reauthorization of the Food Security Task Force. Unless, of course, a new structure is in place or proposed that would replace the task force, which has been our recommendation for a number of years and continues to be our top recommendation. So that we've put on hold the reauthorization as we listen to the proposal by the mayor's office. And we have spoken with a number of supervisors or supervisor aides and getting some feedback on this proposal. And the mayor's office will be socializing this and getting more feedback from folks. So our process of reauthorization is on hold for now. And we can talk about that after Peggy presents, and we can take a look at that, but it seems to make sense at this time to evaluate this proposal and then and whether or not the task force would need to be reauthorized. Are there questions? Any questions on that? Okay, we have a quiet group today. It's all good. I'm going to open this up now to public comment. This is public comment on the status of the Food Security Task Force. Okay, I am not seeing any hands up nor notes in the chat. So we are quite ahead of schedule. I don't know if Peggy's here yet.
She is not here yet.
Yeah, I think we're about 10 minutes early. We can skip up the agenda to maybe any updates. Usually our last item is updates and emerging issues. So I'm going to go ahead and move that item up. And we'll have a few minutes. So we will now be addressing item number 10. Does anyone have any updates or emerging issues? Okay, I am not seeing any hands up. Or notes in the chat. Okay, great. All right, so we have any public comment on updates or emerging issues? Okay, so we have, after the food structure conversation, we do have the update on the biannual food security and equity report. That is the data report that has been working on. Who is presenting for that, Eric?
It will be Kayla Plank and Phil Lowenthal. They're with SFDPH's Center for Data Science team.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Okay, and they'll be joining a little bit later.
Yes. Well, they're here already, but
Yeah, I'm afraid to get into that because it's a longer
yeah, it's going to take
presentation, so,
longer.
yeah.
I just pinged Peggy and it looks like she's available, so hopefully she can get on in the next couple of minutes.
Okay, great. Yeah, no worries. You know what we're going to do is I'm going to take some time just to show briefly some of the slides that the draft of the slides for the they're not finished yet, but that accompany the Food Security Task Force recommendation PDF. So I'll share these now. Are you seeing this?
Yes.
Great. So these are also the slides that will accompany the report. Again, there's some still adjustments to make that we will be making to just make it possibly a little bit shorter and a little bit more bullet pointed, just to bring out some of the major items. But again, the consistent message really this year is the persistency of food security, given the disparities, the income disparities in San Francisco, and the persistent high cost of living with increasing food cost rises, which do, as we know, continue to increase with costs of fuel. So there's not anticipated reductions in that, but definitely increases. And of course, the historic deep cuts to CalFresh and mitigating that impact. And that is covered in a number of And then this is just more detail that goes into it. Thank you, P, for putting this together. Again, we've talked about this before, the importance of the self-sufficiency standard, the affordability versus self-sufficiency standard. We do talk about the health disparities and food security rate disparities among neighborhoods. And then we talk about food investments in the city to give an overlay. And the biggest one you see here is these CalFresh EBT benefits. And then we don't have any mayor's budget from this year, but we do briefly review just what we know from the mayor's budget from last year that was proposed. And then here we go into a lot of work that Jay Mill and the HSA team has talked about and really already started a lot of work around this, these cuts to CalFresh. I am seeing Peggy on here, so I'm going to just wrap this up quickly. Peggy, thanks for popping on. And again, we detail some of the SNAP cuts for those that want to get into a little bit more detail. And then we also talk about the impacts of Medicaid and those Medicaid plus SNAP cuts, which is a double whammy for a lot of struggling families. And so we sort of review some of that impact that might have. And then we do talk about medically supported food and nutrition and some of the potential cuts and the constricting timeline for CalAIM and the healthcare implications of both that, again, Medicaid cuts to medically supported food. And we go through some of these other details. And then we review again, as we already talked about, the recommendations. So there you have it. You have that was the quick preview of those slides. I'm going to, before we turn it over to Peggy, I'm going to just open up for any comments on those slides of the recommendations. Okay, I'm not seeing any food security folks commenting. Opening up for public comment. Great, I'm not seeing any hands up and no comments in the chat. Okay, thank you. Then we'll go ahead and move into our next item, which is, sorry, pull up my agenda. Item number 8, update on the new food structure in San Francisco. And thank you, Peggy, for joining us. It's all yours.
Great. Thank you all for having me. And sorry, I heard that you all were moving quickly, so I was able to jump on, but thank you for making the time. So today we wanted to bring everyone together to really talk about where we're at as a city and also what we heard. I think we've now heard from all of you and play it back to this group, given how much work you all are doing here. So one of the things I think Sissy was just referencing in even the lead up here is where we're really at as a city is we are facing a massive tidal wave change that is coming our way due to the federal changes with HR1. I think one thing I will just note for this group is I'm really proud as a city that we have decided that we're going to make some really important investments in keeping people on benefits, both in terms of CalFresh and as well as Medi-Cal as we go into this into the budget cycle. So I'm proud to say that there will be some real investments being made to ensure that we're keeping as many folks on benefits as possible. The reason I just put that into context is we also heard, we've heard previously really a desire around a broader food system plan. And I think that's something that we really understand and see the vision for. But as we're just dealing with this really urgent and unprecedented challenge in terms of the changes that are coming our way in our social safety net system, we're really working all hands on deck. I know the HSA team is here, but also with DPH and others to figure out how do we respond in this current moment where so many folks are at risk of losing benefits and how we can do what we can do to keep those supported. At the same time, I think we really recognize that we need to shore up our broader food system as we think about our broader food insecurity system as we really think about the impacts of this work and knowing that there will be folks who fall off benefits. So the reason I say that is a precursor for why we wanted to come together today to talk about potential food legislation that would help that we believe would be a step in helping us work more in a more coordinated fashion with all of you and in partnership with our community as we try to figure out how we respond to this current moment and lay the groundwork for hopefully more coordinated systems moving forward. So I just want to give that sort of context, and then we can dive into some of the specifics around the legislation. But any immediate questions before we dive in? And then I don't know if I have control over the slide. So feel free to go to the next slide whenever you're ready. Any questions before I start to dive into the proposed legislation? Okay, so what we're looking at right now is really threefold. One is creating a more centralized effort or centralized office within HSA, which would be tasked with really overseeing our citywide food efforts. One of the things that we heard in many of our listening sessions earlier with the mayor was the city funds our food programs through 9 different departments. The timelines are all different. No one really is able to track all of them. And part of what we're hoping to do here is really charge the Office of Citywide Food Coordination is to actually have that line of sight across all of those different initiatives and programs and be the interface with community. So you all can know, okay, I want to understand what is coming up. I'm going to reach out to the office to make sure that I understand the latest and have that information. The second piece is around an advisory body. And this is one I just want to flag. I know that this has been something that community has been asking for. And I think what I will say is we are really committed to creating a structure for input, feedback, and transparency. I will say, and I know that we prefaced this previously with some of you, we are trying to figure out exactly what this will look like, especially given some of the staffing capacity, even as we make it through this budget cycle. Transparently, I'm also we're trying to figure out where some of the pieces will land, which would have implications. But how it is framed here is around a food security council that would be co-chaired by the Office of Citywide Food Coordination and a community organization that would meet quarterly to advise the mayor's office on our strategy for food security. The reason I'm just preferencing it is I do want to make sure that we have the capacity to adequately staff this, but it is something that we've heard from you and we're trying to figure out how we can make it possible. But we'll make sure that this is something that we're in conversation with all of you as things progress. And then lastly is the report. So one of the things that we have right now is our biennial food report. And I think after many reflections with many folks, I think we have understood that the 2-year time frame is a little bit challenging, right? We go from collecting data, reporting on the data, and then immediately collecting data and reporting on the data. It doesn't really give the time that it needs to have in terms of actually implementing or recommendations, really making the changes that we would like to see. And so we are suggesting moving forward with a more impactful 5-year planning cycle, which also we are hoping that this would align with this. DCOF is going to be launching a new citywide community needs assessment on a 5-year time frame, which would allow the food report to go another level deeper. And so we're hoping to align many of our different community needs assessments to be able to go deeper in the specific topic areas while having the citywide needs assessment do some of the groundwork across the board. We would, however, still have an interim report that captures funding, service levels, and other updates. We would be proposing a shift to this 5-year timeline, and the vision would be that this would be led by the office at HSA. And again, I am just framing this up in terms of we have to see exactly where the budget cycle goes because there are a lot of moving pieces. But this is where we're at right now, and wanted to make sure that we're giving this overview to all of you. We will have some more targeted slides with detail, but we wanted to just lay out the proposed timeline of what we're imagining. So this month and next, we're imagining engaging community and soliciting feedback. We also think because of the moving changes in the budget, it'll give us a chance to just make sure that we also have internal understanding of what will be feasible and possible. And then we would be working on finalizing that draft legislation in June to introduce it to the board in July. The reason why we want to do this is that we would be able to move it through prior to the August recess, so the legislation could be passed in September, and any new council would start in October. before I go into the details, any questions sort of on the overarching? And then, like I said, we can go into the specifics so everyone can review. It will be a lot of bullet points, so I won't go through each individual one. So any questions at the macro level at this point?
Chester Williams, is there an issue or what's the rationale behind HSA taking lead?
Yeah, I think for many reasons. One of them, as I think you even saw on the graph that Sissy showed in the previous slide deck, HSA comprises more than 85% of our city funding for food. And so as a result, I think they have already the biggest purview over our food funding. And I will say, and I know that HSA is on the call here, I think with the current CFAT team, the Citywide Food Access team, HSA has been doing a lot of work, I think, to really embed themselves in this food space and to be working with all of you in our convenings, including the ones earlier this year. And so we really view it as there's a team that has this expertise that is really thinking about our city food programs, that has that strong oversight of a lot of the dollars, who can really be elevated to serve in this cross-functional role in partnership, obviously, in advising the mayor's office. Any other questions at this? Great. Then I will go into the Office of Citywide Food Coordination, and then I'll so what you'll see here is just the breakdown of the role and structure. Like Chester, like you just called off, the idea would be that this would be located within HSA and would be elevating the existing team that does some of the citywide food access work, but to have them play this role of being a strategic partner in ensuring that we have interagency alignment. It's something that, transparently, I will say, even coming in, it's been hard to figure out all of the different food programs that we have across the city, even from within the mayor's office and from within the city. And so what we're hoping to do is to have a partner in HSA who is really tasked with maintaining that overview of the city food programs, that can help align some of our food security strategy, that can coordinate the information with our community around what is happening, when are procurements available, and that can support the Food Security Council as co-chair in this version. And I'm sorry, it's quite loud in my office, so I apologize if you're hearing a lot of noise, but bear with. If you go to the next slide, so what you'll see here is the proposed advisory body. So like I mentioned, we still are figuring this piece out. Just I want to just be transparent with all of you as we figure out some of the internal. I think as we think about the budget and taking a step back, I think you all may have heard, but we are also, as a city, are facing, as instead of having just cuts to our CBO communities, we're also looking at layoffs within our city team. And so as a result, I think we're just trying to figure out, what will be the resourcing that we have on this. But the vision for how we are thinking about it today, and we're trying to figure out what we would be able to do to make this happen, would be a food security council with quarterly meetings. The idea is that it would serve as an advisory body to the mayor's office on this food security strategy. And we would imagine it playing a role in identifying what are the needs that are happening within our community, what are new strategies or other strategies that we should be strengthening to support our community, and what are challenges that we just might not be aware of on our own. And so that is what we're hoping this council could play. And you'd imagine a mixture, as we lay out here, a mixture of CBOs, of city partners, and of what we're calling consumers, which are really residents who may be experiencing food insecurity. And I'll pause there. I'm not going to read every single bullet because I think that will be somewhat boring, but want to take a moment to have any questions on this piece here. If no questions, then I'll move on to the last piece, and then I'll frame up one final piece for the group. So this is essentially the report. And And as I mentioned in the introduction or in the overview, we are proposing moving to this 5-year cadence. We think that that will just allow the city to do a more in-depth job of actually understanding food needs, diving into some of the real nitty-gritty of the data, evaluating our current programs, et cetera, and then providing some real tangible recommendations for how to move forward. We would still propose an interim report. We are not saying there's nothing between year 1 and year 5. That interim would be a more scoped down piece that would have, like we mentioned, funding and service levels and some of the key strategic updates. We are imagining that the council could play a role in providing input into the plan for this, helping with some of the community engagement and reviewing findings. And we will make sure, obviously, through all of this to engage the city attorney as we're thinking about some of the guardrails and guidelines around these sort of external bodies. So those are the 3 main components. The last thing that I will frame up that is outside of this, but I think it's important for all of you to know, is that we as a mayor's office have stood up what we're calling Results for San Francisco, which is how we're planning to execute against our top mayoral priorities. We have stood up what we're calling the safety net pod. I know the pod language is a little bit funny, but it's essentially a group of cross-departmental group to come together to think about how we can protect our safety net in our time during this time right now. And so we are including both one piece of that is, like I said, keeping as many people on benefits as possible, but the other is actually looking at this food coordination and bringing folks together from different departments to really be thinking about how we do that food coordination, not just like we said within HSA, but within the entire system as well. So I name that because I think it's important to see that we are actually, this is a priority for the mayor's office to be figuring out how we can engage in this work, and we are pulling together several different departments to help think through some of those pieces together. Okay, I went through a lot, but questions, reactions, did I miss anything? And Susie and Cindy, I think, are on the call. Feel free to jump in with anything as well.
Yeah, Peggy, Reagan had a question about how many appointments to the, how would appointments be made to the Food Security Council?
Yeah, we had and in the current proposal, and again, this is, I will say, I think the council is the piece that will just be workshopping, like I said, just given some of the other moving pieces too. We are proposing right now that this would be primarily mayoral appointments. I think we, especially as we think about this as a body that will be advising the mayor's office, that would be the ingoing plan would be mayoral appointments. And we could imagine a range of an application process, just like we do with many of our boards and commissions.
Peggy, maybe you could expand a little bit on, because you mentioned it a couple times about the budget and how that might impact this council. Can you expand on that? Like, is it?
Yeah, no, and I just, and the reason that I just wanted to bring it to this group is we are, as you know, we're finalizing the current budget in the next few weeks. And I think what we're just trying to figure out is what will be the changes that get made at some of our departments and the implications that will have for some of for staffing this type of body. So what I'm just trying to figure out, and I just want to be open with this group, is we're actively trying to figure out what that would look like and whether or not there will be the resourcing for it. And so I don't want that to be a surprise. And I think that this is something that we are, even in the last few weeks, are still figuring that out, because there are some of these moving changes and or moving pieces within the budget cycle or budget process itself. And so I just didn't want it to be a surprise. It's something that we're also figuring out because there are these changes that are happening, and wanted to just preview that we need to kind of see where a few pieces land, and we would be sure to bring it back to folks from the Food Security Task Force as we have more line of sight into some of those moving pieces.
Okay, so let me just be understand, because one of the because we're talking about reauthorizing the task force, and holding on reauthorizing the task force, given that there's a different structure in place. But is there a chance that the Office of Food would go through without a council? Is that
No,
what the
so
budget issue is, or what if it's not staffed, what is that? Is there still a council, or is
yeah, no, what I would say for that is I think what we're really committed to is creating a structure that would allow for feedback, input, et cetera. I think what we're trying to figure out is that a formal and like I said, we are genuinely trying to figure out what would be possible. Is that a formal Brown Act body, or is it a structure that we commit to and say we are planning to do it, but it doesn't have the same there are different requirements, as you all may know, around Brown Act bodies versus not. And so I think we're figuring out what that could look like and if there are other options. We are still working through, like I said, I think we're still trying to figure out whether or not we can make a council, a formal council work. We're just figuring out what that would look like and what it would take and whether or not we'll have the resources. I just don't want it's something that, like I said, I think we're actively figuring this out because there are these shifts that are happening even in the last couple weeks. So give us a little bit more time to even see, where things are falling. And our hope is that we would be able to make something work. I just didn't want it to be a surprise, given that even like even getting some of this information as we're figuring out just across all of the different departments and the changes that are coming forward in the budget.
right? And I would just say that would be a big concern for I mean, one of the important things about food security is how we've talked about the symbiotic it is between the community and resources and the government resources, and how important that transparency is. And one avenue to ensure transparency is public meetings. So it's hard to have transparency. I'd be interested in knowing, if there's not public meetings, what transparency would look like.
And we would definitely, and I will say, this is why we wanted to just bring it here. We would definitely follow up with you all to share what this could look like. We are committed to having public meetings. I think there are just different flavors of what that could look like, but we would definitely be, like I said, we would want to come back and propose a couple different options, just depending on a couple of things that have landed. The Brown Act piece of it has a very specific set of administrative requirements. It doesn't mean that we would not be able to continue to do public meetings, because that's what I'm trying to say, is like we are committed to that piece. We're just trying to figure out what that could look like. And we would bring it back and want to make sure that we're engaging many of you in that as well. We're trying not to have this be surprises. We're bringing you in as this is like we're shaping this honestly in real time as this goes through. We do not want this to be a surprise, and we will definitely follow up as we, like I said, as we have more line of sight into where a couple of pieces fall, so that we are all, that this will not be a surprise. We will make sure that we follow up as we get clarity.
Great. Katie.
Yeah, so and again, I'm just trying to make sure that I understand this correctly, but is the idea that follow-up as you work through some of those details will happen before the legislation is introduced?
Yes, so we are, like I said, we are, as you can imagine, we have a lot that I think we can build into a draft legislation, but before we would come forward with any final piece, we would imagine wanting to engage many of the folks here to just share where we're landing. And to get additional feedback. I just wanted to make sure, I'm sorry, I think someone is off mute. I just didn't want it to be a surprise, as this is, this was the current state of where we're at, but I do want to make sure that if there are changes, that we're able to let you guys know that, and we'll follow up. What I can say is we know that the transparency, and we know that the public engagement is something that is incredibly important to this group and to others within the food security space. We are committed to that, and we're just trying to figure out what that looks like. And like I said, we'll make sure to engage the task force and other groups so that folks have that clarity as things evolve. Other questions, and I can't tell if I'm.
Yeah, I have some more. I'm gonna if there's other task force members, but I'm gonna bring up some. So one of the obvious distinctions between the current food security task force and the this proposal is the size of the body, which is in alignment with my understanding of the recommendations of the
Yeah.
task force on committees, right? To make smaller, and these would have similar like rotation, 3-year rotations on the So I think that's not surprising. The question is for those other city departments, particularly ones that we're interested in, that for a number of years, the Food Security Task Force has talked about bringing in the how important housing or food security for those that are unhoused and also moving into housing from unhoused. And other departments like DCYF and Department of Recs with the agriculture or urban agriculture. What is there any mechanisms or have you thought of how those groups are going to be the other city departments integrated into this?
Yeah, the way I would tee it up, or the way that I've been thinking about it is, well, one of the things we didn't want it to be a body that's entirely just city departments. So that was partially what we were hesitant to have in sort of the public piece. When I'm talking about the internal pod, I can tell you already that we are engaging across many different departments. We'll be bringing in and have conversations. I think I see someone from environment, but talking to someone from environment tomorrow, Human Rights Commission, given some of the funding that they have, DCYF, OEWD, given some of the work that is happening with our micro enterprise home kitchens, alongside DPH, HSA, et cetera. So I think what we're imagining is some of the internal structure will allow us to bring pieces from the community engagement and from back into that pod that will allow us to have that oversight across many different departments without having each of them have to come or each of them sitting on any sort of formal structure. So that is how we're imagining bringing what we're doing, and this is across many different areas that are priorities for the mayor. We are creating that internal cross-department setting so that we're giving line of sight. And so we actually have a meeting on Monday where we'll be bringing together many of these departments to talk through what is the problem statement that we're solving for, what are some of the key results we want to be tracking as a group, and we'll be giving them, many of them already, we've done some one-on-ones to do some previews of this, but to just make sure everyone's understanding some of the changes that we are talking about in terms of coordination and the expectation there. So that is how we're sort of trying to manage the internal cross-agency work that we know is important for this as well. And with the Office of Citywide Food Coordination in the future, we can imagine them being able to also play that liaising role across them as the chair of the body and as a key representative on the safety net pod. Other questions?
All right, let's open it. Any other food security task force? I'll open up to the community. Michelle.
Thanks, Sissy. Hi, Peggy. I am one
Michelle.
of those people you're meeting on Monday, so nice
Yay,
to see
great.
you here. Hi. I have a question. Well, so I saw that there was like 5 city departments, and then we listed OCFC, and I'm a little bit acronym challenged. Can you go over what those acronyms mean? I put it in the chat. So I see
Yes.
DOS, OCP. Can you go over what that means?
Yeah, so OCFC would be this new Office of Citywide Food Coordination. So and they would be a non-voting member in this iteration of it. Would be that's OCSFC. DAS is the Department of Aging Services, and so they have a large portfolio that provides food within that. BFS is the CalFresh team under HSA, but it's the CalFresh representatives. DPH is the Department of Public Health, and then SFUSD is the school district. That is the current proposal of what we imagine would be the departments that are. So it's 4 voting members, and then the Office of Citywide Food Coordination as like as a co-chair.
Okay. Yeah, I knew some of those acronyms. I think I was more specific to like what is the OCP as part of DOS, and then I didn't know
like
what
the Office of Community Partnerships, I believe.
Oh, that's like their internal team.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's and then BFS, I will defer to benefits and
family supports.
Got it.
That's
Okay.
the benefit side of the house, just because they're, obviously we got the safety net piece with CalFresh, and that's a big piece. And then we have like the community-based programming through DOS. So trying to tie together different aspects that are kind of supporting community and clients.
Okay. And then TBC for SFUSD, that's
So I actually talked to Jennifer Labar from SFUSD. I think TBC was to be confirmed because I just hadn't spoken to them yet, but I had a chance to connect with Jennifer, and again, they were comfortable. They would be comfortable serving in this capacity if we were to be able to move forward with the council.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Preeti.
Hi, Becky. Nice to see you again. I just wanted to put this out there, and just because, coming from DPH, regardless of what shape and form this council comes out to be and what the structure is and the governance is, one of the key pieces we want to make sure that we are able to continue is to kind of keep the focus, or at least some part of the focus, around health and its impact, like food's impact on health and the well-being of the communities that we are serving. And so one part is like addressing food insecurity, which is critical and important. And I know we kind of follow that data, and we kind of are measuring our success around how we're dealing with it. But then there's this other aspect around how is this work impacting the health of our communities? And I want to make sure that work doesn't get lost in some of the shuffle around the focus and where it continues to be. So I just wanted to put that out there around, not losing that health aspect, because I know this body sort of lived in DPH, and I just want to make sure that it continues to do so.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I definitely hear that. And I think from our end, and when we are talking about this even on Monday, we are planning to bring up some of the food as medicine work. I know that that's a really important part of a lot of, some of the shifts that are even happening, or not the shifts, some of the big investments that are happening externally. I think we're trying to figure out how we can do more there. And I know we were talking about this earlier today, Priti, about how we're thinking about this even in terms of our maternal and health work as well, because we view it as intersected. So I don't think that we definitely view that as a key part in transparent. I think when I think about food insecurity, I think about it also within the lens of food as really nutrition for our community's health. So. But thank you for raising that.
I do want to bring up this topic just because it's come up before, in a number of community gatherings there's been a voicing of a longer term strategic plan addressing food security, but also focusing on a greater food system and not just food security. And I know you've answered that before, so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to answer. This is not that. Right?
It's not that. And yes, yeah. and this is what I was alluding to at the beginning. We totally heard that, right? It was very clear in many of our conversations. We understand the desire and the need. And transparently, where we're at right now is we do not, as we're trying to really shore up our systems to respond to HR1, and as we're facing a lot of drastic cuts that are in part so that we can continue to provide our incredible public health system that we offer in San Francisco, we just don't have the capacity or resources to do what I think would be the level of engagement we would want to do on the longer term food systems plan. That being said, I think we're open to re-engaging the conversation once we get through some of the immediate response around HR1 towards the end of next year. And what we've been trying to do, and why I flagged that in this food or safety net pod, in the food element, we're actually thinking about some of the pieces around our micro enterprise home kitchens and having OEWD actually be at that table as well, to start to think about some of those pieces, as you mentioned, Susie, around the broader food system, and knowing that this is part of the food ecosystem that isn't just our shoring up our food security, but also thinking about production, delivery, et cetera. And so I want to just name that we heard that feedback. We really thought about what it would take, and we did the work of trying to say, okay, well, how did this look in other communities? We had resources that were shared by members of the task force for us to get up to speed. And I think where we're at today is we do not think we would have the capacity to do that and do that well in this moment.
Right. Reagan had just to confirm that the 3 of the 5 department seats would be from HSA.
That's the current, that is the current proposal, just because they do have different HSA, as you can imagine, is now combining. We have our benefits folks from really the CalFresh side, which, as you saw, is such a big percentage of the dollars that we share. And then the DAS portfolio itself is so large. Again, the Office of Citywide Food Coordination wouldn't be a voting member. It would be really trying to play that role of coordinating across the board. And then we would want to make sure that to Pratisa, we do have DPH at the table to bring a lot of that perspective around food as medicine, as nutrition, and then SFUSD is actually the next that we were looking at, like what are the biggest funders of food work in the city, and then SFUSD is the next one up.
Right. Okay, definitely want to open it up for members of the public to comment.
I just wanted to say too, Sissy, hi Peggy, good to see you
Hi, Jay.
again. Thanks again for presenting to the Food Security Task Force and facts last week. And just want to let folks know here too. I know I've said it a couple of times already, but if no one's heard me say it yet, just that, we hear that long-term food system plan can't be committed to by the mayor's office at this time. But we do believe that there are parts to a long-term food system plan that can be done now, or a comprehensive food system assessment. So we're working on developing a plan for the plan, and conducting other parts of like a comprehensive food system plan and like an SF food policy scan that can be done in the meantime, and that will hopefully act as set us up for success when we are able to commit to the development of the plan, so we can hit the ground running. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for that, because I know that this is something that's really important to you and the community. Okay. Well, thank you guys for having me, and thanks and we will, like I said, we will stay in touch, because we recognize there are some moving pieces, but we will, this won't be the end of the conversation. We will make sure that we follow up as things progress. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay. Great. All right, so next steps, we'll have an opportunity to absorb this a little bit. We have the presentation coming up next about the biannual food report for the Food Security Task Force. We do need to, Jay, go ahead.
Yeah, Sissy, I know you're talking about next steps, but yeah, I was just curious, like what the task force, did we take a position on what was presented at some point, especially if they're considering introducing this in June? Do we need
an extra meeting? Yeah, the question is how much. Yeah, if anyone has any, I mean, we can extend a little bit. Apologies to the folks presenting next week. We actually have a little bit more time at the end because we moved up one of our items, but yeah, this is an opportunity for feedback for folks to the Food Security Task Force. But there's a couple things that we wanted to highlight that are really different from the current structure. One is that folks would be on the council. It's obviously smaller, but I do not think that a council, because of the work of it, that might be a challenging debate, given that the direction of this committee on committees is for smaller council committees. But the other thing is that it's appointed, the members are appointed by the mayor's office, and currently Food Security Task Force are nominated by the Food Security Task Force, and then they are confirmed by the Board of Supervisors. We also report technically to the Board of Supervisors, the Food Security Task Force, so that hence the recommendations we do annually, and we meet with the Board of Supervisors and their aides. So so those are differences, and
Sissy,
the
may
frequency
I?
of meetings. Go ahead, Mei-Ling.
Another difference is that the city staff that are appointed currently are appointed by their own agency, identified by their agency. So we're not appointed by the mayor or board of supervisors. I'm sorry I didn't say this earlier, but I would like to echo Sissy's point about how important the community meeting and connections that we have. Though this is often a large body, we have often a lot of members of the public present. I think that's been a great benefit to sharing information. I know that I'm quiet at these meetings a lot, but I do gain a lot from them. For example, I've been meeting with this body for over 10 years, part of this body, and early on, the idea of cultural foodways and importance with that was something I picked up from this body that I think is something San Francisco does really, really well. We have adjusted our programs at Rec and Park to reflect some of the learnings that we've had here on this body. For example, 60% of the crops that we offer are culturally relevant. I think in the past we just gave out a lot of kale. And now we're making sure that we're meeting cultural foodways of the most at-risk members that we work with. That's just one small example of things that I've learned from being able to be part of this body and these meetings. And I definitely would like to highlight how important that is. I heard capacity issues; it's a real thing, but I think that it's an important aspect of this body.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Mei-Ling, I will agree with you on that. I think kind of what I was hearing from Peggy kind of looks at the fact that you're absolutely right. You're going to have pertinent agencies within the city be people that are actually representing and maybe making major decisions about communities that they're not familiar with. They're going to say they are, but they're not, because they're not on the ground actually dealing with these communities. They're dealing at it from a administrative level, and I'm not sure what our fight will be for that, because that's very important, as you said, to understanding what are the needs of the community. So I'm hoping that, Peggy's decision, if she's informed as she seems to be, that she's able to express that when they get down to the final decisions, because that's going to be a key. If you want people from the community to participate in meetings like this, because right now they've just completely turned off. They have just completely turned off. They don't want to hear about it, because what they're feeling is you're not going to come through for us. So that's what I don't want. That's what I don't think we want to put that kind of issue out there. We want to be able to say, no, you've got a voice, you've got representation, and we want to hear what you have to say. So that's kind of where I'm hoping that things will turn around and work themselves out. Thank you.
Other comments, impressions? Yeah, so as in terms of next steps for the task force, we do need to move quickly. I don't know if this is really a topic that we have to, I'm not sure if this is like a votable issue, whether we're going to vote as a group or if we feel comfortable at this, certainly not for this meeting, but we'll look into whether we actually vote as a group for the next meeting. But there needs to be some substantive discussion on that, because it will be, I mean, we have the hard part is we cannot it's the time frame for reauthorizing the task force is literally like we'd have to do it right away, like yesterday, right? So it's sort of this, are we going to do nothing on that part? Are we feeling like this is a compromise we can live with? But also we have an opportunity to, because it's an ordinance that has not been written. So we have an opportunity to give substantive feedback on this. So I do want people to have a little minute to think about it. I think in our next meeting, my suggestion would be that we meet and then we make any recommendations to this proposal, and move from there. Go ahead, Reagan.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I'm worried about the timeline, like you mentioned, Sissy, that their proposed timeline goes beyond when we would, lose our window to reauthorize. And I think it goes back to what we've been saying over the last few months about even if we were looking at the new, the new structure that we had envisioned, we might consider reauthorizing as a bridge to that. And so I think also just hearing how many question marks there still are, and the lack of commitment to the Food Advisory Council gives me pause. And so I think that I would lean towards trying to reauthorize for the sake of having that bridge. And even if this does move forward and we still make our recommendations to make it stronger and better than what we have seen today, I think that's all great. But I worry where we would be left if we don't reauthorize and there's also no advisory council.
Yeah, I think it's going to be complicated for the Board of Supervisors to. Unfortunately, I don't think both can happen, right? So it's like it's going to be a little complicated, but I totally get like that would be the preferred path. Okay, we are. I just want to wrap up just because we need to make sure there's time for the equity report. Again, we have a little bit more time since we did our item number 10, so we've got just a tiny few more minutes. Any last pieces? Reagan, we'll look into reauthorizing again. I think it's going to be complicated. I think it's like, unless we're really opposed to the council, I think it's going to be complicated to reauthorize. If that makes sense to people. Okay, so we will then have a chance for folks to think about this, brings also back to the organizations, come back, and we will need to make we'll need to have something finalized by that June meeting to move forward. Okay. All right. Any public comment on the last conversation? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up and I'm not seeing any notes in the chat. So we'll be moving it along. So welcome for our data people. Do you want to introduce yourselves, or Eric, do you want to introduce folks?
I can kick it off and then I'll just hand it over to Kayla and Philip.
Great.
But today's presentation is going to be on the preliminary data set that's a part of the biannual food security and equity report. There was one for the first iteration of the report, so it's really mostly updating a lot of that data, and the purpose is to really help frame food security in the context of health and nutrition. So I'll pass it off to CDS, who did all of the heavy lifting for all of this data.
Great. So Phil's going to share our slides. Phil, you can go ahead and do that. And hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Kayla Plank. I'm the lead for the health equity team here at the Center for Data Science. And I'm here with my colleague, Phil Lowenthal. Phil, do you want to quickly introduce yourself while you get the slides up?
Hi, yeah, I'm Phil Lowenthal, epidemiologist with the Center for Data Science. Thank you, everyone, for making time for our presentation today at the meeting. Can you see the slides now?
Yes, but if you want to put in presenter, perfect. Yeah, that looks great. Yeah, so we're here, like Eric said, to present the 2026 preliminary data set findings. Next slide, Phil. And we're just going to start with an overview of the preliminary data set's purpose, and then we'll review the health data and end with some Q&A. So next slide. So ordinance number 10321 requires DPH to produce and share a data set on food security and related health conditions and existing disparities with other city departments. The 2026 preliminary data set was shared out to reporting departments back in February of this year, along with the food program framework. And the goal today is to really share the key health findings from that data set with the task force today. Next slide. All right, so let's begin with the food security data for San Francisco. So looking at pooled data from the California Health Interviews Survey, we see that 43% of SF residents with incomes below 200% of the federal poverty level. So that's roughly 30K for a family of one and 50 for a family of three in 2023 experienced food insecurity. The proportion of residents who were food insecure was even higher for those who identified as Black, African American, or Latinx. Those who were transitional age youth, so that 18 to 24-year-old age group, and then those with incomes below 100% of the federal population. Next slide. So at this map, we're looking at food insecurity among all SF adults from 2024. So it's not specific to a certain income level. And this data comes from CDC Places, and CDC Places captures survey response data from a random sample of adults living in San Francisco. And what you see here is there's a higher proportion of food insecurity among all adults, particularly in the northeastern, southeastern, and southern regions of San Francisco. So that would be about the neighborhoods, Chinatown, Tenderloin, Bayview, Hunters Point, and Visitation Valley. Next slide. Because income is an important factor for protecting against food insecurity, we're really interested in understanding disparities in economic metrics for San Francisco. So we'll look at a few of those now. Next slide. So in 2024, the citywide median household income was roughly $140,000. 5-year estimates from 2019 to 2024 show inequities in income by race ethnicity. So Black, African American, and American Indian Alaska Native residents had the lowest median household incomes, while those who identified as white had the highest median household income. Next slide. When we look at poverty levels over income, we see that overall 10.6% of San Franciscans live below the federal poverty level. So the federal poverty level was about $14,000 for a one-person household and $30,000 for a family of four in 2023. Residents with gross monthly incomes at or below 200% of the federal poverty level, so that's about $30,000, are eligible for SNAP benefits in California. So in 2023, nearly 172,000 San Francisco residents, about 21%, fell below that 200% federal poverty level. So we would surmise that those would be residents that would be eligible for benefits like CalFresh. Next slide. When stratifying by race ethnicity, 5-year estimates from 2019 to 2023 indicate that the percent of San Francisco residents living at or below the federal poverty level is highest among those who identify as Black African American and American Indian and Alaskan Native. Next slide. We also looked at poverty level by age group, and we found that poverty is highest among those who are 18 to 24 years old, also referred to as the transitional age youth. Next slide. So I'm going to hand the presentation over to Phil, and he's going to start presenting on our mortality and morbidity data for nutrition-sensitive conditions. A nutrition-sensitive health condition is one where the prevention, management, or risk reduction depends not just on direct nutritional intake, but on broader social, economic, and environmental systems that shape food access and dietary quality. Academic research shows associations between food insecurity and several health conditions. So if we were to address those social, economic, and environmental factors that lead to food insecurity in San Francisco, we would likely see reductions in mortality and morbidity related to these health conditions. All right, Phil.
Okay, thanks, Kayla. So I'll go ahead and get started here with or continue where Kayla left off on this slide. We're showing some mortality data. So deaths due to malnutrition among all residents in San Francisco over a 3-year time period, 2021 to 2023. And you can see it in the last row in this table, the total number of deaths for that 3-year time period, that's 717. And then the crude rate of deaths, and this is per 100,000 residents, is 29.5 for all of San Francisco. And then the mortality rate, which is broken down by race and ethnicity in the table here, was lowest among residents who identify as Latino or Hispanic of all races. So it was 15.3 per 100,000. And then highest among Black or African American residents who don't identify as Hispanic or Latino, and so it's 59.3. So you can see the disparity across different kind of race, ethnic groups in San Francisco. A few of the rows here, the data is suppressed because those are occasions where the total number of deaths didn't reach a threshold of 10. And then there's also one row here, second to last, where it says unreliable, where the death count for this 3-year time period is less than 20. Yeah, I'll go on to my next slide here. So here also looking at more mortality data and looking at 6 of nutrition sensitive conditions. That's the primary cause of death. And this is looking at a 5-year time period, 2020 through 2024. And it's stratified again by race or ethnicity, again highlighting the disparities that we see when we look at this data. We're looking at heart disease, cerebrovascular disease or strokes, hypertension, Alzheimer's, diabetes, and then colon rectum cancer. And so the bar chart you're looking at, the pink color represents citywide or all residents, and then the remaining blue bars are the different race ethnic groups in San Francisco. And for some of these rows, you'll see there's missing data because the numbers weren't large enough for us to, in the interest of protecting data privacy, to calculate a rate. But just want to emphasize for these 6 different conditions, we see much higher rates among Black or African American residents in San Francisco in the data, the mortality data that we looked at, and also higher rates among Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islanders. You can see for heart disease and then for the other conditions, the data, we didn't reach that threshold I mentioned earlier. So, and these rates are per 100,000 residents. So the values that you see up here for, say, for all residents, for heart disease, that's 66 deaths per 100,000 during this 5-year time period. And then I wanted to then move on and look at some, away from mortality data, look at the hospitalization rates, again, for nutrition sensitive health conditions. And just really want to emphasize that these, we realize, are an imperfect way to measure the prevalence of these health conditions in San Francisco. So by the time somebody, is admitted to the hospital for a condition like diabetes, there were a lot of sort of opportunities through, preventative health care that were potentially missed that, somebody reached that severity of disease where they were, had to be hospitalized. So, so a couple other things to keep in mind in the next couple of slides I share is that there is the potential that the same person was admitted to the hospital in any given year more than once. We don't have a way with the data set that we have access um, potentially count somebody more than once for their hospitalization. And also we're looking at data for all San Francisco residents, not just those who are experiencing food insecurity. And so in this slide and the next one, I'm looking at hospitalization rates due to diabetes. And this is the primary cause why somebody was hospitalized, stratified by race, ethnicity, and that a dotted line in the middle of the slide is the citywide rate, and these are hospitalizations due to diabetes. So citywide was a little over 11 hospitalizations per 10,000 residents. You can see with the highest rates among Native Hawaiian or the Pacific Islanders. So that's almost 78, 77.6 hospitalizations per 10,000 residents, followed by American Indian or Alaska Native, and then Black or African American residents. So again, just highlighting there's these disparities across the city residents of San Francisco and who's being hospitalized for diabetes. This slide also looking hospitalization rates for diabetes, but by zip code. We don't have neighborhood level data for this, but gives you a sense where the highest rates of hospitalizations are in the Civic Center and South of Market area, the darker shaded blue, and then in the southeast section of San Francisco, so Bayview, Hunters Point, and then also Treasure Island. And those call outs there, those boxes in the map are either the highest and the lowest rates of hospitalizations that that were in the data. So 94124 zip code, 31.7 hospitalizations per 10,000 residents. And this is looking at a 5-year time period, so 2019 to 2023. Compared to, sorry, that 31.7 compared to for all of San Francisco, 11.1 hospitalizations per 10,000 residents. So moving on to hypertension, still looking at hospitalizations, and just want to emphasize we did talk with a primary care physician who works with a department who noted that with hypertension could have been associated with a range of health conditions, including those that are not nutrition sensitive. For example, hypertension due to kidney disease or gestational hypertension. But again, when we break down or stratify the data by race ethnicity, you can see there's disparities in who's being hospitalized for hypertension, with the highest rates among Native Hawaiian or the Pacific Islanders and Black African American residents. You can see the rates that are on the slide there compared to the citywide rate of about 3 hospitalizations per 10,000 residents. So, and then looking at the data by zip code, could see for zip code 94124, 6.7 hospitalizations per 10,000 compared to a citywide rate of 2.9 per 10,000. And then the third nutrition sensitive condition we're going to look at with hospitalization rates is heart failure. And again, broken down or stratified by race ethnicity, with the highest rates that were reported during this 3-year time period, 21, 22, 23, reported among Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islanders and Black African American residents. The rates there compared to the citywide rate of 23, a little over 23 hospitalizations per 10,000. And then displayed by zip code, again, you can see the Civic Center, downtown area of San Francisco, and also the southeast region of the city where the highest rates for hospitalizations for heart failure were reported. And then also Treasure Island there as well. And you can see the rates on the slide, how they compare. So I wanted to move on from this and look a little bit specifically at pregnancy-related health outcomes, because research has shown that there are associations between food insecurity during pregnancy and then pregnancy-related health conditions, including preterm birth, low birth weight, gestational diabetes, and gestational hypertension. And we see, in San Francisco that there are disparities in the rates for these health conditions when they're stratified by race, ethnicity, and then also by geography. So we'll, in the next few slides, take a look at some of this data. And so in this slide, you have a kind of a line chart looking at 3 different time periods here, and the time periods are pooled, each one of them for 3 years to smooth out the data, and then also be able to report data for as many of the different race ethnicity groups in San Francisco as possible. And so in this slide, just want to mention preterm birth is defined as a birth that occurs before 37 weeks of gestation, so about 8.5 months. And it's a leading cause of death among infants. So in the most recent year we have data, 2022, there were 622 infants born in San Francisco who were preterm, so born before 37 weeks of gestation. And you can see in these 3 time periods, higher rates among Black or African American residents, represented by the orange line in the slide. So in that most recent time period, 2020 to 2022, preterm birth among Black or African American residents was 14.3 per 100 births versus 8.1 among all pregnant people in San Francisco citywide. On this slide, we have data related to low birth weight births, again stratified by race, ethnicity, and you can see differences here among different race ethnicity groups among in San Francisco. And so the rate of low birth weight was highest among Black or African American residents, 14.1 per 100 births, compared to citywide all residents, about half that, 7.1. And then moving on to gestational diabetes, and that's defined as high blood sugar that occurs during pregnancy in pregnant people who don't already have diabetes prior to the pregnancy. And it's related to increased risk for preeclampsia, so like high blood pressure and high protein in the urine, for cesarean delivery and for diabetes later in life. And so in the data, we see differences in the rate of gestational diabetes during pregnancy among those from the different groups that are presented here, with the highest rates among Asian residents at 15.7 per 100 births compared to citywide rate of 9.4 per 100 births. This is for gestational diabetes. Gestational hypertension is another indicator metric that we monitor closely. So high blood pressure that occurs during pregnancy, again among those who didn't have high blood pressure prior to pregnancy, which we know is is a risk factor for heart disease and stroke, and it's a major cause of maternal and fetal mortality. That's something we want to monitor closely. And so we do see disparities among different race ethnic groups in San Francisco, with Black or African American residents having the highest rate, 18.3 per 100 births, compared to citywide rate of a little over 12 per 100 births. So I wanted to move on. I have just a couple of slides related to mental health indicators, mental health outcomes. And studies have shown that food insecurity is associated with an increased risk of mental health conditions that we're very familiar with, like depression, anxiety, sleep disorders, and suicidal ideation. So we don't have local data on the number of food insecure residents with mental health conditions. We do see trends around mental health in San Francisco, and so we know that can address food insecurity. It may also have this effect of reducing mental health vulnerabilities among San Francisco residents. So just overall general trends in mental health, and here we're looking at pooled 5 years of data, 2019 through 2023. It showed that hospitalizations due to major depression was highest among those who identified as Black or African American, Native Hawaiian, and other Pacific Islanders, and those who were 15 to 24 years of age. So that transitional age youth group that Kayla mentioned earlier. And then pooled data from 2020 2020 to 2024 showed that 16% of San Francisco residents reported experiencing serious psychological distress in the past year. And this is more common in those who identify as female, those who identify as 2 or more races, and those with incomes below 200% of the federal poverty level. And then also those who identified as bisexual or pansexual. So then moving on to nutrition, income, we know, plays a large role in someone's ability to afford nutritious foods. And so research has found an association between food insecurity and then lower fruit and vegetable intake, and higher sugary drink consumption. So based on the Youth Risk Behavioral Survey data that we have access to, found that only 43% of high school students in San Francisco, so less than half, reported daily fruit intake, and only 49% report daily vegetable consumption in the past week. And the percentage of high school students who consumed at least 1 sugary drink per day in the past week was 20%, so 1 in 5. And the proportion of middle school students who consumed a sugary drink the day prior was 58%, so almost 2/3. And in this slide, let's see, while we don't have recent fruit and vegetable intake data for adults from 2018 through 2022, there is a general increase in the percent of adults consuming sugary drinks at least once per day, from 8% in 2018 and then up to 11% in 2022. And it's 2021. Just want to emphasize there was this large increase that was observed, 17% reporting consuming a sugary beverage at least once per day, but that there was more variance during that year in the data. So that year, 2021, may not be as reliable. So we just have one more data slide, just kind of, well, it doesn't have data in it, but just sort of putting everything together, because we presented a lot of information related to food security and health indicator outcomes. So this table here shows a summary of the data presented, including some priority populations. So on the left side of the slide, priority populations looking at age stratifications, race, ethnicity, and then zip code neighborhoods that stood out in the data, depending upon which indicators we were looking at. And there were disparities in, Kayla presented information on income, and I presented data on more mortality and morbidity. And these are, when we're doing comparisons to citywide metrics. So we're hoping this can kind of inform kind of steps forward. We want to look at the priority populations and then priority indicators. So I want to open it up for questions that you may have based on what we were presented today, and just say, yeah, thank you again. And thanks to my colleague, Kayla, and yeah, be happy to answer any questions.
Super. Thank you guys for going through that. Were there any was there any comparison done to the previous biennial report in this? Were there any variations that stood out?
I think we mostly just updated the data, but I don't know if we spent too much time looking at it. I wouldn't say that I saw anything, because I did the data last time too. I think that the trends are pretty similar.
Yeah.
But I didn't focus too much on did things get worse or not. So I will go back and take a look, and I'll get you an answer.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's a good question.
They overall look fairly similar in terms of the ethnicity is disproportionately impacted and such. I was the TAY numbers looked high. I don't remember the TAY numbers from before, but that was a very interesting around the food security for the high rates of food security among transitional age youth. Questions, comments from the group? And then maybe we could talk about how this folds into the report.
Now, I want to thank him for the for the report. It's pretty much given for someone that's usually out there. Is pretty much on point. I think I am going to make some predictions, but I'm only going to make a prediction from my point of view. And I think given kind of where the city might be headed, there may continue to be a decrease in Black and African American population, either through death, sickness, or simply continuing to move out the city. And because the reality is certain communities now are beginning to change. And the city's concept of where it is, I think, going to be kind of hard for a lot of them to adjust because they're used to living a certain way. That's probably why you see the figures that you see in that report. But I will say it's my own personal opinion. But what I've kind of seen is a difference, a change, because I'm always out there on the street looking at what's going on. And the reality is, will they continue to try to help themselves is an issue that I have a question mark. Because I think a lot of the issue is we've given a lot of opportunity to particularly the Black and African American community to make a change in their lives. Some have taken it. I talked to some that are very thankful at everything that's happened. And there are others who just don't seem to care. So I want to keep that reality. I'm a realist, so I want to keep that in mind that's where I think we're headed into the next 5 to 7 years in San Francisco. Don't be surprised if I'm right. I hope I'm wrong, but don't be surprised if I'm right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Chester. Other comments, questions? I just want to say that these really line up with the recommendations that we're talking about with the, when you're just seeing like the food securities across the whole city, and a lot of supervisors we talk to in different districts talk about that, particularly with their senior population that may not show up as much as huge concentrations of blue, with the high levels of food security, but it is all across the city, as we know. But certainly it is super prevalent in certain areas and with certain populations. So this really, brings this home in a very real way. So yeah, I think it's helpful to continue to point that out. And as Preeti mentioned earlier, to bring up the health issues that correspond with food. Yeah. Okay, let's open up for public comment. Do we have public comment for folks? Okay, I'm not hearing not seeing any hands up. So how does this fold into what is the time frame again for the biannual report, and how does this piece fold in?
I can answer. We are in the middle of data collection right now from reporting departments. So reporting departments have a little over a month left to turn in their data to us so that we can start cleaning it up, summarizing it, and then start an analysis plan. So how this preliminary data set folds into that is really the data that the CDS team collected and their, initial analysis of what the priority populations and demographics are, using that data to look at the data that we're collecting from reporting departments to see if they align in terms of, are city-funded food programs addressing these health disparities? Are they serving populations that are most impacted by food insecurity and nutrition-sensitive medical conditions? And then from there, we'll generate recommendations that will be a part of a public community process, just like last time. It's going to look a little different this time, but the same theory.
Okay, great. Super. And I know that was like super helpful for the first biennial because we didn't have a big sense of the spending across all the city, right, for food security. So I think that was very, very helpful. This also dovetails into what we were talking about from the mayor's proposal, that going from biannually every 2 years to 5 years, but with a 3-year update. So yeah, so one of the things that we did recommend was that for the 3-year update is there going to be a lot of change? So one of the questions we have is, is there a lot of change in 2 years? Do you really need a 2-year? Is it better to have a more complete longer term? But that mid-year is super important. And I think the feedback from the Food Security Task Force, when we were talking about the recommendations earlier, in a couple meetings earlier, was really around a lot of the budget and the funding, right? And city programming funding changes versus as much of this detailed this food health disparity work, maybe this every 5 years, but more of the more detail for the 3-year report on some of that monetary budgeting changes, especially with the big changes with SNAP and Medicaid, right? Does that resonate with people? It's a good time to talk now because if we're going to make, it is part of this recommendation. I think for folks doing the data, Eric, do you have any sense? Earlier, our group was concerned because every 5 years might miss an administration, but it sounds like if there's 3-year updates on more of the budgetary, that will catch those administrations. Does that sound all right to people? Guillermo, thank you. Chester? Katie's looking good, so we're feeling okay, great. So that is helpful for us. Great. Any other questions for these presenters? Again, thank you guys for all this work. It is really depressing to see, but really important. And thank you, Chester, for that feedback. It's kind of like what we know. We see a lot of this. We hear it. Our program works with folks with diabetes in particular, and we see these disparities really up close. Preeti's group works with pregnant folks. So thank you for illuminating this in a way that's we can really see it and so appreciate it. Okay.
Sissy, did I miss my chance for public comment? Sorry.
Oh, go for it.
It's Jana from the Food is Medicine Collaborative. One thing when you were showing the data on diabetes hospitalizations, what stood out to me is how the much lower percentage for Latinos that have been hospitalized. But my understanding is that numbers of Latinos in San Francisco that suffer from diabetes, the actual numbers are much higher, and also higher percentage of folks who have diabetes. So I think it might be useful to provide that context, particularly when you're talking about food and diabetes, because like you said, when you introduced it, that hospitalization is a poor marker because, it's always people are much further along in their disease, but actually we can intervene pretty well with folks earlier on when their diabetes is maybe uncontrolled, but not as extreme as when they're getting hospitalized. So I think that even though the Latino numbers there were low, there are lots of folks in San Francisco who have uncontrolled diabetes or even early stages of their diabetes that would very much benefit from access to healthy food, and would also impact, the healthcare costs and the suffering, the needless suffering that is caused by diabetes. So I just wanted to add that in there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that comment. Yeah.
Any other public comment? Thank you, Jana. Okay, great. Thank you all. Yeah, great. Got your comment there, Jana. So thank you all. We're moving we already did our updates. Just gonna do we're wrapping up this item. Item 10, we did our updates earlier, so thank you. If there's any last minute updates, just want to reiterate the next steps, and if there's any changes to the next steps, but we will need to move forward on any as a task force if we want to make specific recommendations or if we have specific concerns or recommendations, or don't feel comfortable with the proposal by the mayor's office around the council, we'll need to make sure that surfaces very soon. So I think we'll make sure that we have enough time in the next agenda, the next Food Security Task Force agenda. And we'll just check with a timing to make sure that we have time to give that feedback. If not, we will look at making an emergency meeting. Does that sound okay with you, P and E? Okay, so that'll be the plan. I really encourage you to think more about this. I want to again this will be the time to bring up those issues around things like appointments and who's on that committee, who's representing that, what is taking a closer look at the content. And then hopefully we can get a little bit more information from Peggy on the budget constraints and how that impacts the council in terms of those the public meetings. So hopefully we'll if we get more information on that, we're happy to pass that on too. Make sense to everybody? Okay. Yes, Chester.
Yeah, Sissy, did you say that we may need to have another meeting?
What I'm saying is, I think our June meeting will give us enough time.
Okay.
If we can get, people need to just be organized when they come in there we're going to be like, okay, these are our concerns. This is it. And then, really, if we're not comfortable with this structure, that would have to come out very strong in that meeting. But otherwise it would be like, okay, we're comfortable with this, but we're concerned about this, right?
Gotcha.
So that feedback we need that. Hopefully within 2 weeks we'll be okay. If not, we'll talk to the mayor's office, and if we have to do an emergency meeting, if we need to get that information from y'all sooner, we would make an emergency meeting. Of course, we have to publicize it, right, for everybody, for all the community, and then we would have that meeting earlier if we had to. Hopefully we won't, but if we do, we'll let you know. Sound good to everybody? I know it's a lot today, so thank you for being here. Thank you for your input and consideration, and really looking forward to any other input you have on this, on all of this biannual report and the structure and other items. Okay, that's it. We're calling them. Any last comments before I wrap it up and call this meeting? Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.